lesson focuses on Mauro Giuliani's Study in A minor on page 99 of Beginning Classroom Guitar. This is a fantastic arpeggio study. It's a very popular piece. You hear many in beginning to intermediate guitarists practicing this piece. What it offers us is our first experience with something known as a compound arpeggio. So we've talked about arpeggios in a number of pieces, most notably Prelude in A that had our P-I-M-A arpeggio. Study in A minor uses something called, as I said, a compound arpeggio. This is basically two arpeggios that have been put together to create a more complex pattern. When we look at the first measure of the piece, and more specifically the first two quarter note beats, which are 8/16 notes, what we see is a right-hand pattern of P-I-M-I, A-I-M-I. That's a perfect example of a compound arpeggio. It's two smaller arpeggios that have been put together. So if we break that up, we have P-I-M-I, and then A-I-M-I. I go ahead and practice each of those patterns individually. So I would practice P-I-M-I. And as with all the other arpeggios we worked on, keep the rhythm very even. Make sure that you're counting even 16th notes. 1 E and 1 E. And if you need a metronome, use a metronome to keep it even. As it starts to become easier, increase your speed, but keep the arpeggio perfectly even. P-I-M-I, P-I-M-I. Once you practice that, then switch over to the second part of the arpeggio. A-I-M-I, A-I-M-I, and do the same process. Put the two together into the compound pattern. P-I-M-I, A-I-M-I, P-I-M-I, A-I-M-I, 1 E and 2 E and Once you've practiced this, we can move on to adding the left-hand chord shapes. This is the toughest part of this piece, getting down this right-hand pattern. So go ahead and pause the video and practice through that very first pattern that's in the first two quarter notes, P-I-M-I, A-I-M-I. Welcome back. I hope that arpeggio now seems a little bit easier. So the only thing we left out is what happens on beats 3 and 4. And once we add the chord shapes, it'll actually make a lot of sense as we see how to do this walking bass line. So if we add our A minor chord shape, but instead of using all the fingers, just go ahead and use the C and the A with the open E and then the open 5th string A. And you're going to put your thumb on the 5th string, index on 3, M on 2, and eventually your A finger on the 1st string. So now we're going to go, using our compound arpeggio, P-I-M-I, A-I-M-I. The next notes are basically an alternation between thumb, in this case on the 5th string, and index finger playing that 3rd string A note. So we have low A, high A, low B, high A, low C, high A, low A, high A, the whole first measure. Go ahead and pause the video, practice measure 1. Measure 2 uses the same exact right-hand pattern for the entire measure, but we switch to a D minor chord shape. So once you feel comfortable with that D minor, then you just add P-I-M-I, A-I-M-I. So we have the first two measures. chord. First finger on the 3rd string, 1st fret, second finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret. Same right hand pattern. Now we have 2 quick chord changes without the walking bass line. We have this A minor with a C in the bass going to an E7 chord. So we have the first 2 lines. Go ahead and pause the video and work through the first 2 lines. So here's the good news. Line 3 is a repeat of line 1. It's an exact repeat. So now we can focus on line 4. Line 4 keeps our simple right-hand pattern, the P-I-M-I, A-I-M-I, without the walking bass. And it's going to switch between chords. We start out with a full A minor chord shape, and we go. The bass note changes, it goes to the 6th string, but the chord shape stays the same. The chord shape changes, that we lift up our first finger, creating an A minor suspended chord. And lastly, an E major chord. So line 4. So line 4. The last line is a quick change between 4 chord shapes, and the arpeggio changes. For the last line, we have P-I-M-A, just a simple P-I-M-A, exactly like prelude in A. We're going to go from an A minor chord, A, A, C, E, to an E chord, E, G sharp, D, E, E7, back to A minor, A, A, C, E, to an E chord, E, G sharp, B, E. That pattern will then repeat. And finally an A at the end. As you work through this, focus on smooth chord changes in the left hand. Fortunately, all of these chord shapes are ones that we've previously used in pieces. The switch to D minor is a little tricky, but move what you need. Don't feel like you have to move the entire chord shape at once. So, a great right and left hand study. Study in A minor.